This is TV Podcast Industries, and we're talking about the 5th episode of Star Trek Picard, Stardust City Rag. Welcome back, fellow Trekkers. This is TV Podcast Industries, and we are delving into Stardust City Rag, the 5th episode of Star Trek Picard. I am one of your intergalactic hosts, John.
I'm your other host, Derek. It's just the two of us this week again.
Yes, Chris unfortunately got crossed with a fly, and so is currently undergoing very intense medical treatment to get him to humanoid form again.
Those damn transporters.
I know, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately, you can't be here because of work trips and so on. Really? So we can't wait to have you back, Chris. Just remember to get yourself back to Earth as soon as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is the 5th episode of Star Trek Picard. We're halfway through the season, John.
We certainly are. It is flying by, dare I say it, at warp 9.
Ooh, is that allowed anymore?
Or, well, warp 11, turn it up to 11.
You got to turn it up to maximum velocity, don't you? This episode felt like it was turned up to maximum velocity this time. A lot of kind of comments the last 4 episodes have been building the story, and this one was all out battle for a lot of it, really, wasn't it? With a lot of story in there too.
Yeah, a lot of story, a lot of different things going on, and 7 of 9 absolutely spot on. Really, really enjoyed this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Action-packed. And a lot of kind of deception and intrigue all coming through as we get to meet Bruce Maddox as well. And he's not in a good state, but I think we save that for the podcast. Yes. This will be a spoiler-filled review, Trekkies and Trekkers. And of course, we will be going through our 3 top points of the episode. Our Prime Directive, our Omega Directive, and of course our number 1 point, which is our small point, of course. Remember, if you haven't already, it'd be great to have you subscribe to TV Podcast Industries. We're currently doing a rewatch of Penny Dreadful in preparation for Penny Dreadful City of Angels. We looked at the Witcher series there recently, and of course we have our back catalogue of Marvel Netflix Defenders series, as well as Gotham, as well as Good Omens, The Boys, Watchmen, you name it, you can grab it here on TV Podcast Industries. So please head on over and subscribe on any Federation or Romulan supporting podcast player.
Absolutely. Just a reminder about that retrospective for Penny Dreadful. We're releasing that at the moment over on Patreon, releasing it early over there. So if you want to get access to the first couple of episodes of our reviews of Penny Dreadful Season 1, pop on over to patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries. Donate any amount and you can get access to those episodes. We're hopefully going to be putting out 3 episodes a week in the run up to, Penny Dreadful City of Angels. There's 27 episodes to review, and we want to make sure that we finish all 3 seasons of that show before we kick into the effectively 4th season of the show, even though there's a bit of a time jump in it. Brand new characters for the most part, but we want to make sure that we get to the end of those 3 seasons before we get to City of Angels. So please come join us over there. It'd be really good to have you join us.
Yes, especially if you are a Harry Treadaway fan. Of course, he plays Narek on Star Trek Picard. But he plays Victor Frankenstein.
Yes, he does.
Over on Penny Dreadful, which is a glorious gothic horror. Very rich, very complex. So we hope you're all enjoying it, those of you who are getting the early access at the moment as well.
Yeah, we're going to save those episodes to be released until after we've finished our Picard podcasts. We're going to save the Penny Dreadful rewatch that we're doing until then. We'll put them in the main feed around that time. So that's a couple of weeks' time, about 5 weeks' time. Last thing before we get into the episode, make sure if you have any thoughts about any of the shows that we cover, including Picard, send your feedback and your emails to us at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. You can also send the answers to the pub quiz, the 10 forward pub quiz questions, which we've been giving out at the end of each episode. You can also send them in there, and we'll have a prize for the person that answers the most correct questions in that 10 forward pub quiz.
Yes, I think we need to reveal our prize soon enough. I think we're still working on it, but I think by the next episode, we should be able to give you full details of what you can win on the pub quiz in 10 forward.
And I'm really sorry we said we were going to do it in this episode. The reason why we haven't is there's one of the prizes that we want to get, which is a behind the scenes book on Star Trek Picard, which doesn't get released until the 10th of March, I think it is. So we're trying to see if we can get access to that and make sure that we can get a copy of it, basically, so we can give that away as part of the prize for this 10 forward pub quiz.
Exactly. So let's get into this. Derek, what are some of the episode details?
Yeah, let's get into it. This episode was written by Kirsten Beyer. She's one of the showrunners for the show's 4 showrunners, remember, for this season of Star Trek Picard. She's also been referred to, as I mentioned on our preview podcast at the London premiere, she was referred to by all the other showrunners and executive producers as their Star Trek encyclopedia, the person they go to kind of bounce any ideas off to make sure that they do make sense within the Star Trek canon effectively. And as you probably know from this episode, a couple of quite major characters in there. So probably very useful that she's the writer in this episode.
Definitely, yeah. Fair dues to Kirsten Beyer, because, yes, you need to have an encyclopedic memory to remember everything about Star Trek. It is so long running, so intricate in terms of what's happened. It's just the sheer volume as well of the stuff there to piece together.
Absolutely. And as this is the first show that's taken place after Star Trek Voyager, that's 20 years ago. So there's lots of stuff to remember and lots of things that may have just been missed if you're tying it back 20 years ago to those shows. The episode was directed by number one himself, once again, Jonathan Frakes directing this episode. So you got these 2 episodes back to back, episode 4 and episode 5. John, do you want to tell us what they gave us with the official synopsis for this episode?
Sure. The last Sirena crew begin an unpredictable and lively expedition on Freecloud to search for Bruce Maddox. When they learn Maddox has found himself in a precarious situation, 7 of 9 offers her assistance.
Yeah, it's certainly a lively expedition on Freecloud, isn't it? Let's get into our main points for the episode. Let's kick off with our big moment.
We must face the ramifications of the Prime Directive.
John, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, it is the rescue of Bruce Maddox. That is my Prime Directive. I mean, this is the whole point of coming to Freecloud. He's been in hiding, and we open this episode where he's in this precarious situation. And to be honest, it's not what I was expecting at all. I kind of felt he was going to be sort of in a place where he was dealing in code and all this. He'd kind of gone sort of underground with his technology. And whilst he may have been doing this, he's found himself effectively drugged by this kind of, I suppose, gang leader in a way, this club owner, Bejazel, who is going to trade him effectively with the Romulans, with the Tal Shiar. But of course, it's not that simple because it's the Tal Shiar. So they need this facer. So they need to set up this trade to effectively hand him over. But I have to say, I just wasn't expecting him to be sort of beaten, broken, bloody, and effectively really, whilst the whole reason for this episode and for the whole reason why Jean-Luc is coming to Freecloud, he actually becomes one of the lesser motivators for everyone around here, as we find out, whether it's Raffi, whether it's 7 of 9, other than for Picard. But this guy is bruised and broken. And I kind of really like that. It just wasn't something I was expecting. But certainly, we learned that he was, carrying out his work still. I think it was under Bejazel's kind of patronage to some extent. or she at least knew about his work and what he was doing, because she also had a more destructive tech operation going on as well, because she was effectively harvesting and stripping out parts from Borg, which again this episode opens with. But we find that the facility that he had, there is nothing left. That this molecular disinfectant was used that effectively left nothing. And, did the Tal Shiar do it? Was it the Chad Vash? Was it something to do with that? Or was it because, and what we learn later from Bruce Maddox, as he's been rescued by Jean-Luc Picard and the whole gang, is that, he had these theories circulating around the synth attack on Mars. So effectively, he had a theory which seemingly people were very keen to have buried, to shut him up effectively.
Well, yeah.
And so you do then begin to think and follow those threads from Raffi's conversation with Picard at a trailer immediately after the attack on Mars, that there was a Romulan thread running through this attack on Mars, this synth attack, this rogue synth. But also, this is where he confirms a Federation involvement as well, or a Starfleet involvement as well, that it wasn't just the Romulans. And of course, we've seen with Commander O, and we've seen with Narek's sister, who is hiding in Starfleet, disguised as a human. And he's just adding the intrigue and possibility of that onto those bones that we saw there in episode 1 and 2.
Right. Well, let's back it up a little bit and just kind of talk about Bruce Maddox himself and kind of why he's on the run, I suppose. So effectively himself and Dr. Jurati are the ones that created the synths, these dumb terminals effectively that were carrying out the work on Mars. They revolted and killed all the people on Mars, right? So effectively the reason why he's known across the galaxy is because everybody's blaming him. Everybody thinks that he did something. He's the one that made these synths revolt or broke something in their programming and they failed and revolted effectively.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's why he's been on the run. But while he's been on the run, he had his own lab, had his own hideout, and that's where he built Soji and Daj, the two sentient synths, I suppose, the more data-like, perfect, imperfect synths, as he says. So this is a reason that he's been chased around the galaxy. It's part of the reason why his lab was destroyed, is because potentially the reason, as you say, John, that the Federation may be involved, or it may be the Zhat Vash, or it may be the Romulans at the very least, is because he knows something, or they think he knows something, and they want to shut him up. They want to keep him quiet in case he creates the connection between possibly the Tal Shiar and what happened on Mars. Because he does have these theories, like, as you say, like Raffi has. So yeah, so he's being sought across the galaxy by everybody because they think he's the one responsible for that massive attack on Mars as well. So
yeah. He's kind of like the WikiLeaks guy, Julian Assange. He's being hunted, and he's found his refuge here.
If he had murdered millions and millions.
Well, exactly. I mean, he does as well, just after his rescue by Picard, he does confirm to Picard that Daj has a sister and that her name is Soji, and he gives them the location of her, that she is on the Borg ship that's been reclaimed and so on by the Romulans. But he does, he sets them to find the truth of Romulans and the Federation with respect to the attack on Mars. And that is, I suppose, the kick-off point. So we're not going to have him joining this gang like I kind of thought we were, in that sense, certainly given what happens just after he arrives onto La Sirena, for sure. But certainly he gives them the next bit of breadcrumb for them to go after.
Well, effectively, this was Picard's only lead, wasn't it? This was his only way of finding Dash's sister. He didn't even know her name. He has no idea of anything about it other than that she looks the same, I suppose, as Dash. So this was his only lead, was to get Bruce Maddox. So luckily, he got that information from him, knowing now that he has to go to the Borg ship in Romulan space, effectively, as they call out. So, I'll go on to my point, because that's very close to my my side of it, John.
I'm glad you got the hint. Exactly.
I did, yes, John. Well done. Dr. Agnes Jurati, the signs kind of within the episode that pointed to what she was going to do at the end. Weirdly, throughout the previous couple of episodes, I think you and Chris have both mentioned that she was on your radar as someone that could possibly be a killer, or could possibly be someone that had their own agenda, let's say.
Yes.
Yeah. So, what we find out at the beginning of the episode, really very early on, the first thing we see is that she has had this relationship with Bruce Maddox. It was a loving relationship between the two.
Yeah,
it wasn't
absolutely.
just a partnership in work, which is something that we had thought in the past. We'd heard that there was a connection between the two of them. If you read the Star Trek novel, the Star Trek Picard, Last Best Hope, you get a lot more detail about their relationship, a lot more about how long they've been together, and their love for each other. And as I said before, that actually took her off the table to me as being essentially bad, that she would not be the kind of person that would do something against Picard and against his mission. And technically she really hasn't. What we learn throughout the episode here is that she has been sent on board this ship effectively to take out Maddox. Someone has shown her, potentially the Tal Shiar, potentially Commodore O, has shown her some piece of information that they have about the destroyer, possibly about Soji potentially leading to the end of things. So she's taking out Bruce Maddox for what he did to atone for their sins. We hear just before he dies that he credits her with being like Dr. Noonien Sung, who created Data, and himself, who now created Soji and Daj. He couldn't possibly have accomplished that without Dr. Jurati. And her response to him is effectively that I need to atone for those sins, because she doesn't believe it ever should have gone there now after seeing whatever evidence has been presented to her. So, good catch from you guys. She was way too innocent. Looking back, obviously, she had that thing about her where you're going to go, yeah, okay, you can't be that innocent on this show. There has to be something going on.
Yeah, I mean, I like the fact that, it connects back to the former Romulan Borg Rhonda back on the cube, and her interaction with Soji, and the destroyer of worlds kind of, the dark portent, I think, of her, that she knows something. And obviously it seems that Agnes has also been told something that suggests this kind of approach to wiping out these very advanced synthetics. I like that it drew in from, I think, what was it, episode 2 or 3, and Rhonda sort of calling Soji out like that as well.
Yeah.
I think her killing Maddox, as you say, she says, it's another thing I have to atone for. And she goes, I wish I didn't know what I know. I wish they hadn't shown me. Which I think obviously seems to implicate Commander O here, as to what, that bit of information is. So it's very intriguing now, because what is it? Is it just coming from a place of ideology because it's connected to this anti-tech kind of philosophy of Tal Shiar, or even deeper elements within it, the Chad Vash? Or is it something else? Is it something much more political, and much more about who controls what systems, or getting an advantage in a military way? There's a lot of intrigue still here, and that really, is nice. I love the way that Alison Pill played this, for sure. And I think the effect of Maddox, kind of his body shutting down and whatever, was happening to his face, it was pretty, hardcore, and coming from someone that you've kind of perceived as being fairly kind of innocent, and almost clumsy, it's almost that accident prone kind of like quality to Agnes Jurati in a sense. Certainly over the last few episodes, where we saw her at the Daystrom Institute, she was much more confident. And I think is that nervousness because of what she's found out.
Yeah, like the murder of Bruce Maddox itself, it looked like she turned off his oxygen. All the blood vessels are popping in his face as he dies. It's a really gruesome kind of death for the character, really. In terms of what this could mean and what could have been shown to her, it feels like everything that she's gone through as a character, and again, I'm not going to spoil the book or anything like that, but remember, the world has gone through this idea of a supernova that was destroying the Romulan planet and all of the Romulans, and they did everything to save them, including Jurati being the one involved in creating these massive amounts of synths so that they could do all the work effectively. Then we have the attack on Mars, which is another massive catastrophe. And they do everything to save that effectively. They try and do everything they can to save what they can save. And now she's been told something else that has led her to kill Bruce Maddox. She's been shown something about what's going to happen or about what has been done. So it makes me think that this is a third catastrophe level event that is being predicted based on the arrival of Soji, based on this destroyer effectively. What could it possibly be? Could she be the one that's going to reignite the Borg, for example? Is it something like that? You know, what's the connection there? Is there something going on? So it is really interesting, but there have been loads of signs. It's a really good point that you make, John, that she was massively confident when we met her first, or she seemed quite confident in her own space, I suppose. And what we saw over the last couple of episodes, even last episode, we saw that meeting that Picard was having, and she goes, "Oh, is this a secret meeting that I've stumbled in on, or am I part of the crew?" Well, that was just her trying to get as much information out of Picard about where they were going and when they were going to get to Bruce Maddox so that she could be involved. A couple of other great signs in this episode when everybody else chooses their costumes and is going down to the planet, and she's told to stay behind and just beam them all up. You realize after watching the episode that actually her reaction is to do with her going, "What, you mean I'm not going to be the one to meet Bruce Maddox?" Because potentially she had a plan to take him out the minute she saw him.
Yeah.
You know, over and over again, we see her getting more and more nervous as she goes on through the episode. And you think, is she nervous about using a transporter? I mean, this is a person that works on Earth at the Daystrom Institute. She's American, so she must be traveling back and forth to the Daystrom Institute using transporters all the time. Why is she so nervous about using this? And then you realize that she is having a psychological break. That's why the emergency medical hologram keeps getting ignited on the ship effectively, is because they're sensing there's something wrong in her brain chemistry. There's something wrong there. She is so het up and so stressed about what she has to do that the medical hologram keeps appearing to try and give her a sedative to calm her down effectively, right up to the point where she kills Bruce Maddox. You still have the emergency medical hologram appearing going, "What can I do here? What can I do to calm you down?" kind of thing. So I love all those little signs as we go on throughout the episode that Agnes Jurati is not who she says she is. And I think it's quite well foreshadowed, and it's always good for the second rewatch, the second time you watch the episode, to go, "Oh, I should have gotten it from those moments," really.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this kind of exposing of Agnes Jurati in terms of her emotional trauma that she's going through and the psychological break. Given her, seeing her watch those intimate videos of her and Bruce Maddox, being carefree and easy, and now seeing her as this nervous wreck, knowing that, she's been tasked with killing, Bruce Maddox, and effectively the information and his genius, around all things, sort of synthetic, and the advancement of that. So yeah, really, nicely done.
Yeah, it was really nicely done, wasn't it? This really good part of the episode. I think that's the end of our Prime Directive section. But I did just want to point out that it is a new actor playing the character of Bruce Maddox. It was really important for the show, I think, to have Bruce Maddox appear. The original actor that played him, Brian Brophy, isn't back for the episode. It's an actor called John Ailes, who's playing Bruce Maddox in here. He does a really good job of playing him. I think in the episode it's quite an important role, I suppose. And it's kind of, he's been talked about since the first episode of the show. And so bringing the character back was massively important. I did see something today from one of the showrunners, from Michael Chabon. All he said was that it's complicated when asked whether the original actors were asked to reprise their roles from the show. He was asked that question, and he just said it's complicated, and that's all he can say, basically. So, not going to question why the actor couldn't come back. He only appeared in Star Trek The Next Generation for one episode. I'm sure it would have been lovely as an Easter egg for him to appear back in the show as that role, but it was important for the storyline that we had the character in there at the very least.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I'm glad they did that anyway. Let's get on to our second point.
Implement the Omega Directive immediately.
John, initiate your Omega Directive.
Yes, sir. My Omega Directive, my medium moment, is Raffi and her son Gabriel. I really liked this this interaction. I really like Raffi as a character. I love her intelligence. I'm kind of rooting for her, really. Even against Picard, that I want Picard to show her loyalty, that personal side. It kind of crushed me a little knowing that Picard hadn't been to visit her after she had been fired. And, we see her taking drugs in her sort of mobile home and all of this thing. So we get to know why she came to Freecloud, why she hitched that ride on the La Sirena to get to see her son Gabriel, who's at a medical center, medical district on Freecloud. And again, this is really, really hard. And she's so stoic here. But effectively, what we glean from this is that the theories that she was looking at, processing, putting through her own mind about the Romulans and the rogue synths and the attack on Mars, her getting fired, had effectively consumed her to the point where, she ignored her son and her own husband. That probably pushed her to taking the drugs from the snake plant. And her first meeting with her son is, I'm clean now, clean from the drugs. But her son, the guy who plays him, the facial expression of pure kind of, I don't want anything to do with you. It's not disgust so much. It's just betrayal and anger still etched on his face. It is just really, really good. I do really enjoy the moment where he's saying about how all her obsession around the Romulans, he's talking about it, and she kind of corrects him about it, saying, no, it's the Conclave of 8. And in that, we get this really nice nugget of the Conclave of 8. What is the Conclave of 8? And I just think this is a really nice character moment for Raffi.
Yeah, absolutely.
She is absolutely intelligent. She's sharp as a pinhead. She knows her stuff about Romulan culture and so on, but it has consumed her life to the point where it's destroyed her life. And you appreciate her terse welcome to Picard, because he could have been that emotional crutch. He could have been that support for her. And he was never there with her to do that. And this is just a really kind of nice moment in this character. And I really, really liked it. I also like the fact that she is stowed away again, because ultimately her son Gabriel doesn't want anything to do with her. He's got a new wife with a baby on the way, but he, I think, still has a lot of pain associated with her. Well,
absolutely. You get the feeling from their conversation that it's not the first time that she's come back to him and said, I'm clean. She is an addict. I think that's what comes across very specifically in this episode. So she may have tried to get clean multiple times before. You also know from the conversation, this is not the first time they've had the conversation about her theories about what happened on Mars. This is something that happened 14 years previously, remember? So everybody is kind of going, the synths did it. Just get over it. Isn't it much better to believe the synths did it than all of those people that Picard and you went out to rescue from the Romulan Empire? All of those people, what do you think? They turned on us and they tried to kill all of our people up on Mars and set the Federation back 20 years by destroying all our ships and our shipbuilding capabilities. That's what's going through Gabe, and that's what's going through in this conversation. I really like that, especially just that moment as well where she meets her daughter-in-law for the first time, Pell, and gets no introduction to her at all. She's a Romulan, as you can see, so another reason why Gabe probably doesn't want to possibly believe that his mother's theory is correct, because if the Romulans are involved and his wife's a Romulan, oh, hang on a second, that's a big question over what's going on, he hasn't believed her before, and she's once again trying to make amends with him, but he's having none of it. So it's a very sad kind of storyline, but it gives you so much more detail behind what's been going on for Raffi. She's been left alone by Picard and by everybody else because of their theories, and she's turned to drugs to kind of take the edge off effectively over the last 14 years. So massive effect on her relationships.
but I do like the fact that she has stowed back onto La Sirena. I think is she trying to hide? It seems like she is trying to stow away and not be spotted. I just really like that moment with Rios where he says, we need to talk about the stowaway, and they go up to the door. For me, I thought that was kind of like the broom cupboard. Right. It could be a cabin or her quarters, but you just hear Raffi say, go away. So an awful lot of humble pie is being eaten. She wasn't expecting to be back on board the ship La Sirena at this moment. She thought it was going to be a happy ever after with her son Gabriel, and it's not.
Her granddaughter.
So it's kind of tinged with sadness and regret, but I'm kind of pleased she's back in this crew.
And we knew she would be. She is a major character of the show as well. But they did have that lovely moment between Picard and Raffi when she was going off to see her son for the first time, where she says there were moments there where this felt like old times, weren't there? So maybe she's not forgiving Picard, but she can probably forget a little bit while she's in his company and while she's doing work with him, and just remember how good it was when the two of them working together. So that moment at the end when she tells Picard to go away and he just touches the door, kind of going, I'm glad you're here. I think that's a nice little moment at the end of the episode.
Absolutely. It's almost the same relationship possibly as with her son. She doesn't quite want to forgive him yet, but she recognizes that they work well together.
Yeah, might be a little further down the line.
Exactly.
The one with their son. I'm going to talk about my second major point, my medium moment for the episode. It's probably a very big moment because it happens right at the beginning of the episode. I've said before, I'm a big fan of all of the Star Trek series, and I remember watching all the episodes of Voyager. There's a character that was in Voyager, for those of you who don't watch Star Trek, a character called Isheb in Voyager, and he makes his appearance in this episode. Sadly, it's his death that happens in this episode. He was a protege of Seven back on Voyager, so we saw him for about 11 or 12 episodes of the show in the 6th and 7th season, so towards the end of the show. He's this young kid that has been released from the Borg, effectively, and she is trying to help him regain some of his previous life. So she is standing beside him at all times and helping him out. So when Seven says the line that he's the closest thing to kin that she's ever had, she's being completely accurate there. There's someone that has gone through the same kind of experience as her and seems to have worked alongside her for years. We have those moments where she talks to Bjayzl about their relationship, saying that the two of them worked together. He went on an exploratory mission and then Bjayzl captured him. There was a trap set to capture him. And it turns out, as we find throughout the story, when Seven confronts Bjayzl, we find out the two of them knew each other, and Bjayzl found out about Isheb because Seven mentioned everything to her. So it seems like Seven and Bjayzl had some kind of relationship before, because Seven says that effectively Bjayzl only knew about Isheb and his existence, and that he was former Borg because of what she told her. So that she revealed all this personal information about herself and about Isheb. It is a massively brutal scene at the opening of the episode. It kind of reminded me of, I think, the start of First Contact, Star Trek First Contact, where you had that moment where it was going into the eye of Locutus, a Borg of Picard, and piercing his eye, that kind of thing. So, having his eyeball removed at the beginning of the episode just felt really brutal.
Absolutely. Eyes and sharp implements are never a good combination.
Even robot eyes. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But this is, this is pretty horrific at the start for sure. There is some close personal relationship between Bjayzl and 7 of 9. I think with 7 of 9, what I really enjoyed here was finding that she's a ranger. She's working in this system, protecting it. Yeah. I really like, there's a reality from being a ranger, probably from being a rescued Borg, knowing her sort of position possibly in the Federation, how she's viewed. I find that really interesting. There's kind of a grounded reality. This maybe world weariness isn't the right word, but at least she knows how the world operates. And I liked how that contrasts with Picard, with his kind of grand principles, and the difference there. And I mean, that all comes to a head where 7 of 9 effectively takes the device that allows them to beam down, transport down to Bjayzel's club. So they think that she's going somewhere completely different on Freecloud, on the planet, and instead she goes down to take out Bjayzel for the murder of Ishab. And she certainly rocks a pair of double phasers for sure. But I like the fact that she doesn't tell Picard because she didn't want to disillusion him. Because the world doesn't always work how Picard feels it should from his principled way. Sometimes there is a more grimy, gritty side, and justice is best taken as vengeance here. Certainly, given that she's a ranger, you kind of do feel they're out in, the Wild West part of the galaxy.
Yeah, and I think, remember where they are as well. They were very close to a planet that was just left to its own devices by the Federation when they pull back, right? So that's the area that Seven's protecting effectively. And you hear it from Picard in his moralistic way saying to her, what you're doing is against the law. And she's going, but what law? This place has been left to the outlaws.
Yeah.
I need to protect these people. There's no one else to protect them. And I love the contrast because we have Raffi talking to Seven going, I totally respect what you do and what you're doing is the right thing. And if you remember that's the whole break in the relationship between Raffi and Picard is he handed in his resignation and retired from the Federation and didn't go back out into the universe to save whoever he could have saved, whereas Raffi would have done that. So when she sees someone like Seven doing what she needs to do, regardless of the rules and the laws and bending them and breaking them, she totally respects what Seven's choice is here. So I really like that kind of interaction between all of them because it tells you so much about all of the stories here.
Definitely. I also do like, just before she beams off, I do like her and Picard's conversation about being human and the legacy of having been a Borg and that you are still trying to work at being human. As Picard says, day by day, So I that was a nice little connection between 7 of 9 and Picard, which I really enjoyed. I like their interaction as well, in the holographic Chateau Picard as well, where you think she's going to walk out because she's kind of done her thing. She knows who this guy is. He knows who she is. That they've brought one another up to speed on what's happened. But then they again start talking about having been former Borgs. And she takes another bourbon in a tumbler straight up as well. So yes, she's a good drinker.
It's always the indication that you're in a Western.
Yeah, exactly. So it's I like the fact that there as well. Then that conversation is left. It's almost as though it's a private conversation being had between Picard and 7 of 9. You've got Rios and Raffi still on the bridge, Jurati in her quarters. So that I thought was a nice little touch between these two characters as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the big question, and I know it will disappoint some viewers of the show. The big question that this leaves us with, John, is will we see 7 again? She does kind of tell Picard, you can contact me again. She gives him the comm badge effectively so that he can contact her in future. But the last we see of her is walking through, getting narrowly missed by quite a lot of phaser shots as she takes down many of the other people in the room, we presume, because the camera's looking at her, I suppose, throughout the scene. So has she been captured? Has she taken them all out and she's off on the run again? Or has something happened to her?
I definitely think 7 of 9 has an escape plan. She is a clever cookie, and so I don't think she's been killed, and I don't think she's been captured. I really hope not.
And will we see her again this season is my other big question.
I hope so.
Hope so. I really do hope so. Our final small point time.
Make it so, number 1.
What's a small moment you want to talk about from the episode, John?
It's simply Elna the Innocent. I really like the innocence here of this character, sort of being taken off his planet where he was effectively in a nunnery, even though it was a kick-ass nunnery. But nonetheless, I love the fact that, he doesn't understand subterfuge. And you just see in his face, he doesn't quite understand what's happening with them all getting dressed up. And then when he finally gets his own costume, he all gets a little bit excitable. It's like dressing up for the first time or something, kind of like getting into cosplay, for example.
Exactly.
And he kind of goes completely over the top, and you just get the sly comments of, just be yourself, Elnor. Be the quiet version of yourself, Elnor. And I really kind of like this, because I presume, this is kind of the start of his journey of experiencing the rest of at least his system and the galaxy, where it isn't a nunnery.
Yeah.
He also doesn't get an advert as well as they approach Freecloud, where you kind of get that fairly invasive Facebook
Spam
type thing. Yes, exactly. For different adverts.
Yeah.
But there are no adverts for Elnor.
Yeah.
He doesn't get one.
I'm going to talk about that in just 1 second as well, but I do like that moment with Elnor when he realizes what's going on and goes, oh, we're all pretending to be somebody else, as if nobody else would realize what it is. I think it's just really interesting. The one character he reminds me of, I don't know whether you get this at all, John, Drax from Marvel's Guardian of the Galaxy, the person that can only speak the truth all the time. In the first movie, definitely. In the second one, he's a bit different, but in the first movie where he just says things that are on the top of his head and doesn't understand a lot of things that are going on, why would somebody use subterfuge at all? Why wouldn't they just go in and tell people what they want and get what they want?
It's the absolute candor that he's grown up with.
Exactly.
And he is not understanding this more sort of duplicitous kind of way of operating in order to get down. I have to say, I love Jean-Luc Picard's horrendous French accent that Patrick Stewart puts on, which is kind of just that kind of weird nod to the fact that he is supposed to be French.
Well, it's actually, I think it's a weird nod to the fact that originally he did test out a French accent because he knew the character was French, and the producer just went, no, just use your own accent, because that's terrible, back in 1986 when the show originally was beginning. But speaking of absolute candor, just do want to mention it. I think it's really important because when Seven's plan is revealed, effectively, she says, I wasn't entirely candid with you to Picard, while Elnor is the only other character beside her. So I just think they use that on purpose, that line.
Definitely.
Just to tie in to them. Oh, and the other funny thing about Picard with his French accent, I love that he has the eye patch over his left eye, but he closes his right eye while he's putting on that awful French accent. He's like, this is how bad it could be, so let's just go for it, kind of
Well,
thing.
and we all know ourselves, if we are not good at accents and we try and put an accent on, then how absolutely awful it can be.
Yes.
Even, recent Oscar winner Brad Pitt, when he tried to do the Irish accent, was awful.
Oh, Beyer was terrible.
It was pretty damn awful.
That was what,
for sure.
Devil's Own, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Really bad.
But yeah, I liked that we're kind of easing into Elnor kind of slowly here, and
he's only been in 2 episodes.
I can't wait to see him kick some ass. I did think he was going to whip out his sword and start slicing and dicing in the bar.
Was it a bit weird that he didn't, or was he just respecting Picard, telling him, don't kill anything until I tell you to kill something, kind of thing?
I think so. I think it was more to do with that. And also because the plan was, once we get him, we get out.
Exactly. As I said, I'm going to talk about the adverts from my small point, because I do think they're just really interesting what everybody gets in their adverts. So pretty obvious one for Captain Rios. It's about the ship getting repairs. That's what the annoying little red thing.
The mechanic.
Yeah, it reminds me of the paperclip that we used to get back in Windows that used to say, are you writing a letter? Because I can help you out. That one, we have Raffi getting advertised drugs. Come down here and take snake oil.
Exactly.
Or snake juice. So that's obviously targeted to the personality, and we have Picard being asked down for high tea, because again, tying into his personality. But interestingly, we have Agnes getting an ad for robotics, the entertainment of robotics, and part of that is obviously she would be known as someone that would be interested in robotics, and that's in her personality. But I like the touch that they have. The way to get rid of it is she has to punch the thing in the face. And when she eventually does it, she says, "Oh, I've never punched anything in my life." And later on in the episode, she murders someone. So
yeah, exactly.
It's just an interesting kind of journey for the character that she begins the episode saying, "Oh, I've never punched anything. I've never thrown a punch in my life," and then celebrates the fact that she's been able to get rid of this digital spam from in front of her. And then by the end of the episode, she's murdered somebody. So quite significant little arc from the adverts all the way through to the end of the episode.
And of course, Elnor gets nothing. And so it's kind of, is it just that he's not on their database effectively because he's been in the nunnery, or there's no desires there, or he's neutral, you know?
I think it's that. I don't think anybody goes into the database or as such as they arrive. I think it kind of reads who everybody is and displays what they most want or what they would be most interested in. And Elnor kind of, what he most wanted was to go on an adventure, and he's on an adventure. So what else could be more attractive to him? What else could he desire, I suppose?
Yeah, exactly.
I think there's some Easter eggs in the episode, so on to that section.
Isn't there something else you have to do?
So there's something else. The nods and notes, I think, for the episode. One that I noticed, which I just thought was really interesting, when Rios is having that conversation with Raffi, he's trying to guess Seven's name. He's kind of identifying that this is a Borg that he should recognize the name of. And first he calls her 99, which is a character that was in it was a sitcom, a spy sitcom from the 60s called Get Smart. The character was called 99, a female character as well. And then he calls her 11, which is a very famous female character from Stranger Things, which is a very famous female character from Stranger Things, and then eventually settles on, it's 7, 7 of 9, the Borg. So I just think that was definitely on purpose, the fact that he's referencing two other characters who had numbers for names in TV shows in the past, and he eventually gets down to 7 of 9.
Absolutely. And also that by remembering that she's Borg, it also trips his memory about Picard. Up till that point, he hadn't remembered that.
Well, it's only when he's told by Raffi, when she says both of them were Borg, she was Borg like Picard, and he goes, "Oh, I completely forgot about that."
Yeah, exactly. Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. John, did you spot anything in the episode?
Yeah, there's a nice Deep Space Nine little Easter egg here. Vup, who is the heavy for Bjayzl, talks about Mr. Quark the Ferengi, who is especially satisfied with Rios's work, as he is kind of masquerading here as this facer for this deal to get Bruce Maddox back. And Quark was the bartender and a major character on Deep Space Nine. So that was a nice little touch to a nod to Deep Space Nine.
So I have to ask, and I presume that means that Quark is out there somewhere, that they actually got an actual reference from Quark for the work for Rios, because this guy seems to know him. Is the bar connected to Quark's empire of bars?
Could be, yeah.
Does he own this place in Freecloud? Because that would be absolutely something that a Ferenginar would do. They would set up this place to take all of the money and all the latinum from everybody in the universe. Come here. We'll, in complete discretion, we'll take all of your money from you for all the entertainment that you like, that you need. I just love the reference to having Quark out there in the universe, because he was always a very fun character.
Yeah, he was.
Show.
Yeah, definitely. Really, yeah, I think that's all our notes and little Easter eggs from this episode. I am sure there are more.
Loads, I'm sure.
So please send in any spots that you have around Easter eggs or background in feedback. That would be great. But finally, we come to our overall thoughts of episode 5 of Picard. Derek, what did you think are overall for this episode?
This went along at some pace with so much stuff going on in the episode. And I just was shocked by the opening with the death of Icheb, because I kind of recognized the character to begin with. I knew it was somebody that we should know, and having Seven have to pull a gun and kill him was a significant moment. Seven was always kind of a standoffish character in Voyager. She was always trying to get back to her humanity, and at this moment where you see her having to kill someone that she knew really well and crying over him effectively, it shows you that this is a new Seven. This is a new character and a different version of 7 of 9. So I thought that was a wonderful opening. Getting Bruce Maddox in the show was, I think, great. I think we really needed to see him. We couldn't have had them arrive there and he'd be dead, because it just wouldn't have worked as a storyline, I think.
Absolutely. But it's weird you say that, because I did think that Bjayzl had killed him. I thought she had given him some poison.
Right.
Because she does have that conversation with Vup, where she goes, kill him. Oh no, wait a second.
Right.
So I did actually think she had killed him after they'd had the conversation and he took a swig of one of her drinks.
The poisony drink.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'm glad he didn't die there, and I think it makes sense that she would want to trade him to the Tal Shiar, to the Romulans, because it makes her a lot of money. That's the whole kind of thing about it, But I like the intrigue that we get in here about what's going on in the future, what could happen in the show, and I like that Picard's now sent off to the Borg cube. So hopefully, since we didn't get Harry Treadway or Issa Briones in this episode, hopefully we'll get a lot more of them in the next episode, where these two groups potentially could meet in episode 6. I'll be looking forward to seeing them together. Overall, though, the death of the character Bruce Maddox, quite a significant death, and at the hands of Dr. Jurati, shouldn't have been a huge surprise as such, because it was kind of guessed by you guys earlier on in the season, but I was still surprised. I was kind of expecting her to stay a little bit cleaner of the blood. But in my mind, the way I'm seeing it is she's not bad. She's just been shown something in the future that made her turn on the person that she loved and kill him because of what he's done and because of what he's created. So we'll see how that plays out in the future. But overall, really enjoyed this episode. John, what about yourself?
I really enjoyed this episode. For me, it's one of the best of the series so far. I give this 4.5 orange feathered hats out of 5.
That hat was magnificent.
It was stupendous. I loved the action in this. I loved the whole subterfuge of them coming down to do this trade and to rescue Maddox. I like the fact that I was surprised by Maddox being in the state that he was and wasn't as such going to be a major part. And certainly by the end where he's killed off by Dr. Jurati, his protege, someone who he's loved, cared for, and thinks is his savior here. Again, the intrigue around Soji and Daj as these destroyers, the end of days, is fascinating. I can't wait to see what happens when they get to the Borg ship.
Yeah.
I loved 7 of 9, her vengeance for the death of Icheb at the hands of Bajazil, I thought was just really nicely played. Her interaction with Picard as well, about being a former Borg, having to work every day to kind of reclaim the humanity, and even just going to previous episodes with Soji, talking about that Borg culture, the news as they described it as well. This lingering thing, even though they have been taken out of the collective and have been rehabilitated to some extent. And as well, just with Raffi, really just a great character moment for her here. Really nicely done. So, a lot of intrigue, a lot of feuding. I love the family stuff with Gabriel and Raffi. So this I thought was a really strong episode. And I loved it even more when I went back and rewatched it.
Yeah, it was really good second time as well, wasn't it? If I've read your ratings right, if I remember them right from all the episodes, this is the highest rated one you've given for this episode of Picard, right?
Yes, it is, yeah. I love the mix of action, adventure, as well as the deeper cuts around Raffi with 7 of 9, and even with Dr. Jurati. I thought it was just really nicely done, and it sets them on the path to the Borg ship.
Yeah.
With a lot of intrigue behind it, so yeah.
And it feels like a very Star Trek thing to kill off Bruce Maddox, who could possibly have had the silver bullet to take out Soji, the switch that turns her off. He could have had that in his mind, and now they've killed him. So it seems like a very Star Trek thing to do, to take him out now, because he could have been the one to end it all effectively. Let's get on to your thoughts on some of the episodes. Let's get on to our feedback section.
Yes, we've got some Facebook feedback for episode 4. Remember, fellow Trekkers, you can head over to our Facebook group. Just go to facebook.com/groups/TV Podcast Industries, and you can join us there. Donald Dennis says on episode 4, the episode was pretty good, but it felt a bit like they were checking off boxes. Also, how many emergency holograms does this guy have? Prediction: the captain is an emergency command hologram. Also, how do they rationalize allowing hologram AI versus outlawing AI synths like Data? And have these jokers just completely forgotten about the dangers of control? Thank you so much, Donald, for that. Yeah, I like your prediction around the captain, and it would certainly go a long way to explaining his literature that he's reading about the existentialness of life and knowing that you're going to die. If he is someone who has kind of resurrected himself through the hologram in some way, and certainly, yeah, it does play into something different as well about the hologram AI versus a physical synth AI.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there is some kind of AI differentiation there, for sure. It seems like the holograms really are following protocols. I think even seeing this on episode 5, where the hologram can be easily dismissed by Dr. Jurati, for something that you would think that they could override. So it seems like they are still commanded by protocol and process, and that is the kind of thing that's hardwired into them rather than different kind of matrix that allows them to evolve.
Yeah, I agree with you. I would be intrigued if he was a hologram, but I'm not too sure whether he is, especially in this episode, because we have him going down to the planet and because we have him changing into this costume and all that kind of stuff. I think you'd probably hit against programming a bit if you were doing what they're doing in this episode. But I do like the idea of him being a hologram that's potentially kept himself alive after maybe he died in that incident that they talked about in the first episode. There was a lot of intriguing stuff that we haven't learnt about at all yet. Remember, there's also that question over why is there only Klingon opera aboard this ship, no other form of entertainment? Did he steal the ship from somebody else? So there's lots of questions over who he is and what he is. But I do like the idea of him being the Rimmer from Red Dwarf of this show, effectively, the character who's a hard light hologram keeping himself alive after he's actually died. I think that's quite an interesting idea.
Yeah, and it's also that, he is solid at the moment. Most of the other holograms you can walk through, but I was thinking that in Voyager, the hologram, there were episodes where he becomes solid state effectively.
Yeah, he was the prototype, I suppose, of the emergency medical hologram that all the rest of these are based on.
So it is possible.
It's absolutely possible. Yep, yeah, definitely something that can be done. I like your reference to control as well, Donald. That was something that we saw in Star Trek Discovery. I'm not going to spoil that, but yeah, they definitely need to check on the dangers of control.
Yeah, absolutely.
We also got some feedback in from Amy Fitzgerald-Dura. She says, the hubby and I binged the first 4 episodes of the show this weekend. He was all sorts of meh, and then watching episode 4, he yelled 7 of 9. I'll admit, I've never been a huge Trekkie, but watching him geek out over the hot former Borg lady is awesome.
Excellent
Bringing
stuff.
families together.
Excellent. Yeah, and she gets a good stint as well in episode 5, so there is plenty for your hubby to get his teeth into.
Enjoy. Exactly. Jim Carrey also says, A-hole spoiled the appearance and made me watch for 7 through the whole show by putting Jerry Ryan in the credits. I'm sure super geeks know who will be featured in what episodes. I'm a story person and I try very hard to keep from spoilers, but I do allow for previews. Anyway, I never know if someone advertised is going to come up with this season will appear as a hologram or a flashback, a dream or hell, a mirror universe. I was thinking she'd show up on the Borg cube and was bracing for that. Since she didn't show up by the 40th minute, I knew exactly what was going on in that last battle, but I shouldn't have. I know this pain, Jim.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do remember checking it out a couple of years ago. I remember we were covering, I think it was Gotham, where they had quite a big guest star. And I wondered why their name was in the credits at the opening of the episode when they appeared in the last minute of the show, because it was supposed to be a big surprise that this character was coming back. And I remember checking into it at the time. And the reason is actually to do with how they're paid for their appearances on a show. Sadly, these contracts that are written for people are written based on their credit on the show. It's something that their agents negotiate. So Jerry Ryan being in the episode, she has to get her credit up front. That's what gives her the amount of money that she earns for being in an episode. I know it's annoying to all of us that want to remain unspoiled when we see an episode for the first time, but unfortunately it's just the way that TV's made these days, that they may have had to pay her extra money to hide her credit until after the episode aired. You know, they've done some creative things in the past to hide that kind of thing. But I think because she was going around the world touring with the show, we did expect that she'd be in the show pretty early. But I know that little last battle moment where she appears for the last 40 seconds of the episode to make you watch her big appearance in this episode. Hopefully, though, you've enjoyed episode 5, where she had a much bigger appearance, because I think it's been a really good seeing Seven back on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. Thanks, Amy and Donald, for your Facebook feedback. Really good. We also have email on episode 4 from Cassie Mack. You can send in emails to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Cassie says, Easter egg alert. Santiago Cabrera played Aramis on BBC's The Musketeers. Check it out if you haven't already. It's quite brilliant. Peter Capaldi as Cardinal Richelieu. I remember that, actually. Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, I remember that.
And the Easter egg portion of that was because of Alexandre Dumas' The Three Musketeers, the book that was in last episode.
Yes, exactly. And it also is maybe suggestive of the hat with feathers in this episode as well.
Well, this came in before Cassie had seen this
yes,
episode.
Exactly.
But
it could be another little bit of Musketeer Easter egging through Star Trek. Yes. Cassie says, well, some random musings. Do you guys have any idea what accent Mr. Hospitality is supposed to have? I can't even begin to pin it down, but from Santi's exaggerated pronunciation of Zaban as Chibon, I get the sense it's a character we're supposed to recognize. I hate being left out of an inside joke. Keep up the good podcasting. I nearly lost you guys when your name changed. So glad I've got you back in my feed. We're glad to have you back, Cassie. Really good to get some feedback in from you. And yes, I think we probably need to keep the word out there that TV Podcast Industries is a evolution of Defenders TV podcast as well as Gotham TV podcast. Yeah. And certainly when we do Marvel and when we do DC, we will certainly be utilizing those handles within the TV podcast area.
Exactly.
For sure.
Exactly. Yeah, we'll definitely be using those in the future because there's lots more DC and Marvel stuff later on this year. But great to have you back, Cassie. I did respond to Cassie saying I thought that the character, Mr. Hospitality, the emergency hospitality hologram, might have been Canadian. I think I've heard that mentioned out there because it's a very slight accent. It's very generic American, generic Canadian kind of accent. And the reason we were saying Canadian was because Canadians are known for their hospitality. So it would kind of be a nice little joke in there.
Yep.
The reference to the fact that he calls Shaban Shiban in the episode, I think that's partly because the episode's written by Michael Shaban and he wanted to put a fine note on the fact that the character's named after him. Maybe that's the little inside joke.
It could be, yeah.
Could be that, but it is interesting. He's the only character really that doesn't have a really standout personality and a really standout accent. But it is still different from Santiago Cabrera's natural accent, the character he plays as Rios. It's still very different from that voice. So I must say he's doing such a great job of doing all of these various characters on the show as well, isn't it? But Cassie responded saying he didn't sound like any of my Canadian podcasters. But that's all I have to go on. What do you think about the gunner that gets an actual name when none of the other holograms have one? Even on After Track, Santiago always called him Emmett. Yeah, even though there's loads of other holograms of the ship, it's interesting, isn't it, that Rios is calling one of them by a name. The only thing that would make me think he might be doing that is maybe he was saved by that particular hologram in the past. He says he absolutely hates the hospitality hologram, for example, because he probably does nothing for him at all. He doesn't like the medical hologram because he keeps trying to treat him for wounds that are making him look cool. Yeah,
absolutely.
So maybe this character of Emmett is someone that saved his life in the past by the things he's done. So, and
maybe the loneliness of space. If he's shipping stuff, he's doing runs on his own. He's got that one personable hologram that he calls upon to keep him company or to have around. Maybe it's that one hologram.
Yeah, but he has populated the entire ship full of holograms that look like himself, which is never a good sign, really, is it?
No, it's a little crazy.
And also kind of interesting that Emmett, this character, has tattoos all over him as well. I think that's quite interesting. Why would you program the hologram to look like you and give him tattoos and stuff. So it does maybe speak back to the idea that he is also hologram, because everyone looks different and everyone has a slightly different personality quirk as well. So we don't know right now, but I'd say we're going to know by the end of the season what the answer to all of those questions about the holograms are. Great to hear from you again, Cassie. Thank you so much.
We have some more Facebook feedback on this episode 5. Bob Phillips says, all about family, feuds, and finality this episode, wasn't it? I quite enjoyed the lack of reconciliation with Raffi and very much the mercy-free approach of 7 of 9 and Doctor, Jury, Judge, and Executioner. Where we keep going, apart from the Borg Cube, is still a mystery to me, which is excellent. Yes, I'm loving the mystery myself. I think there's a real big mysteriousness around Soji, and obviously we have this conclave of 8 as well that's been brought up, which is kind of all very mysterious, and there's a lot of mystery here still around what actually is going on and why. And yeah, I'm liking it a lot too.
Yeah, I was kind of expecting the attack on Mars to become a central point of this, their investigation into what caused that to become a central point of the series. By this stage, we're half the season in, and at the moment, really the mission for Picard is to go and save Soji, the sister of the girl that died in episode 1. So it's just been cracking on like that. So I am intrigued what the rest of the story and how it's going to be brought in to the show. I'm intrigued in how it's going to go, but really enjoying it so far. Thanks so much, Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
And finally, for this episode, we have a voicemail from Steve Bren. Thanks so much, Steve, for this.
Hey guys, it's Steve, and this is for Star Trek Picard, Stardust City Rag, and Raj. Yeah. Anyway, I just watched it once, and as always, I'm sending you my first take on it, because it really was, I liked it a lot. We got to see 7 of 9. I'm a huge Jerry Ryan fan, have been since Voyager, everything she's been in. So I just absolutely love her. And, I thought she was great in this episode. I thought Patrick Stewart was great in this episode. We see him as we haven't seen him before. We see him, going undercover. I loved, Rios, and his persona that he kind of took on there, in this little operation. I loved, Girardi, she continues to amaze me. And the ending, of course, finding out that she knows something. Obviously, Admiral O must have showed her, or is it Commodore O? What was she? Anyway, must have showed her something to convince her that the synths are in the wrong, I'm assuming. So that's why she did what she did to Maddox. But I absolutely love this episode. I hope we get to see more of 7 of 9 going forward, and can't wait to hear what you guys thought. Okay, this was a quick one, but I really did love the episode. Talk to you later.
Excellent stuff, Steve. Glad you enjoyed the episode. I'm really hoping we're going to get some more of 7 of 9 in the future, as I mentioned earlier on. Commodore O, isn't it?
Yes, it's Commodore O, definitely.
Yeah.
Rag is an interesting one as well. I'm not too sure what that's referring to. I think in project management, it's red, amber, green. Oh, it's a newspaper, the old Daily Rag, or is it rags? Is it kind of ragtag in that, this whole place is kind of filled with misfits, criminals, and so on.
Yeah, or even Picard's group themselves are a ragtag bunch, aren't they? So they're kind of thrown together as a team. So maybe it's that. Or the only other explanation I could think of possibly is a rag, as in something that's been used and thrown away.
Yeah.
Like Bruce Maddox.
Exactly.
So he was used to create all of the synths, and he's now sitting here on Stardust City, used and spent effectively, and then he's taken back and killed. So maybe it's that, but I don't know. I can't think of any other thing that it could be.
Yeah, and who wouldn't become more confident with a nice orange feathered hat and a massive sort of almost feathery green overcoat? Did he have yellow pants on? I mean, this is really getting into Buck Rogers. All I want now is some roller skating to go on, disco roller skating.
Excellent.
With, Beady 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 Beady.
different franchise completely, John.
Oh, yeah.
What a great outfit, though. You're getting that for Christmas, John.
Thank you.
Or maybe for your birthday, so you have it in time for Halloween.
Perfect. I'll be able to strut up and down the street, looking phantasmagorical.
Absolutely. Playing a bit of the Bee Gees, maybe, while you're walking up the street.
Yeah.
But I love the reference to that in the episode, that the reason why they're dressed this way is because they want to make sure they stand out from everybody else. The interfacers always want to make sure they stand out from everybody else so they don't get killed, effectively. So they're really ostentatious. They really stand out because of that. So very cool. Thanks so much once again, Steve, for your feedback. And thanks to everybody for your feedback for this episode. We want to hear as much as possible as we continue throughout the rest of the episodes. You will never guess. We were so busy talking about the episode and going through our feedback that we completely forgot to do the pub quiz question. So we come back and we're able to do it now. We've gotten loads of great answers in for the pub quiz so far, the first 4 episodes. Make sure you're taking your notes. If you're not sending them in so far, make sure you're taking notes of the questions so far, because all the ones we've received so far are all right at the moment.
Ooh, spoilers.
I know. But just want to make sure that they know, the people who've sent in their answers to me so far, all of them are correct so far. So,
spoiler alert.
Let's get into our pub quiz for this week. Over to 10 forward. John, what's the pub quiz question for this week?
Yes, welcome, fellow trekkers. Yes, I've got my Romulan ale here in its fine glass. This question is all about the numbers. Given that we've got 7 of 9 in there, I thought we would do a number question. There are a maximum of 3 points available on this question.
Interesting.
What are the number of domes on planet Vergessen? How many are in the Conclave? And what is the perfect number of umbrellas in Rios's Temtibi Lagoon cocktail?
Ooh.
And because it's all about the numbers, I just thought I would throw in an extra point if you can say how many feathers are in his cap.
Interesting. So 4 points available for this week's pub quiz, John. Very good. I think you should read out those questions one more time.
I certainly will. So, question for episode 5 of Star Trek Picard. What are the number of domes on planet Vergessen? How many are in the Conclave?
Okay.
And what is the perfect number of umbrellas in Rios's Temtibi Lagoon cocktail? And for an extra point, how many feathers are in his cap? Although technically it's not a cap.
That's true. It is a hat, isn't it? Yes. Very good. All you need to do is just email us to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com with your answers to the pub quiz questions, and the person who answers the most questions correctly, according to John at the end of the season, they will get some Picard goodies.
Yes, absolutely. And of course, we will be doing this on our final episode of our coverage of Star Trek Picard. So keep on listening, keep on watching, and engage in the pub quiz.
So back to how we originally finished the show.
Absolutely. Here we are.
Thank you so much for joining us once again. We hope you stay subscribed to the podcast. And if you enjoy what you hear, why not share it with your friends? Because sharing the podcast is sharing the love.
Yes, absolutely. You can support us in any way, shape, or form that you can. That is absolutely brilliant. And you can also support us as well on Patreon over at patreon.com/TV Podcast Industries, where we are currently releasing Penny Dreadful. If you are a Harry Treadaway fan.
Or a fan of great acting and awesome horror TV shows, because we're really, really enjoying it so far.
Yeah, it's really good. But we will be back, fellow Trekkers, next week for Star Trek Picard, Episode 6, The Impossible Box.
Bye-bye, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. Keep watching the stars. And let's keep hoping that they don't name another character something like Bejazzle, because it's very difficult to say. I had to wait to get the subtitles for the episode to see how the name was spelt, because I was hearing something completely different. And my notes were going all over the place going, why did they name her that?
Yes, there will be no outtakes for this episode because we have gotten it wrong a massive amount of times to say Bejazzle.
Yeah, I'm so glad we don't do this live.
Yes, exactly.
Thanks so much, fellow Trekkies and Trekkers. We'll talk to you next time.
Yeah, as always, fellow Trekkers and Trekkies, it's a pleasure speaking with you. We will be back again very soon. Remember, keep watching, keep listening, and engage.
Bye.
Bye.